I want to talk about a paper I'm writing. It's not mostly the paper so much as it is the issues of the paper. Um, the paper I'm writing is for a class called Advanced Philosophical Writing. It's a capstone for my philosophy major, so that I can graduate with a philosophy degree. um, Mostly in that class, I can write about whatever I want to. I mean, I can. It has to have like of course, an intro, body, and conclusion. It has to have arguments, that kind of thing. That class is kind of, a lot of people in that class are doing papers on philosophy within the analytic tradition. So I'm kind of an oddball here. What I'm going to be arguing is something that is stated in this book. This is a book by Jacques Derrida. It's called Speech and Phenomena. There's a couple things in here that where Husserl or Derrida critiques Husserl. He critiques not only Husserl's idea of time in the phenomenology of the consciousness of integral time, as well as he critiques the emphasis on perception and immediate experience that phenomenology does. Husserl says to the things themselves, which means, when I look at a certain thing, then we're not talking about mind dependence or independence, but we're just studying the phenomena themselves. We're studying what is given to us in immediate experience. That's what we're studying essentially. So Derrida critiques, first of all, essentially he critiques what he calls on indivisible, undivided, self-contained identity. Now, a lot of what is in this book is about Husserl's theory in the logical investigations about signs and expression. So a lot of this is philosophy of language, but what is also contained in here is not only the essay deferral, which I have a full video about in my post-structuralism deconstruction playlist, which only has a few, like four or five videos in it, which we'll have about six or seven pretty soon, six, 7 or 8. And what is also in here is in the essay called "Signs in the Blink of an Eye." There's signs in the blink of an eye, and also the supplement of the origin. Those are the two main essays I'm thinking about here, which in those two essays he critiques the idea of consciousness of the immediate experience, the emphasis on perception, as well as Husserl's idea of time. What he says about the idea of time is that the present is emphasized, and the afterward or in the future are not looked at. They're not considered that much. And he says that in every now that Husserl talks about in the phenomenology of internal time consciousness, there is a residue or a trace of the before and the after together in this one now. So there never really is one self-contained now. So I would like to kind of, now in a separate video, I'm going to kind of do a little diagram of Husserl's idea of time, so that anybody who wants to understand that can get a better idea by this diagram that I'm thinking about drawing. Husserl never really drew a diagram, but I don't think so. He might have, but yeah, I think he did. He did a little. He kind of did like a little. Here's the imminent temporal objects, and then here's the primary remembrance, and then these are more primary remembrances, and then along this line and this line is retentions and memory and such, and then up here is protensions. So I'm going to do another video where I draw all that stuff out and I'll show that. But essentially what Husserl talks about in the Phenomenology of the consciousness of internal time is that there's this one continuum of immanent temporal objects. Now that is a temporal object, that where I see this is given in time, this is given to me immediately. Essentially, I'm going to have not only at least a few immanent temporal objects, which is like immediate perception of this, but what he also says is that I will have a primary remnants of that, as well as retentions of that, and going down and down and down into the continuums. And I could also have protensions of this as well. So, what I'm thinking about is that Husserl might say, he does actually say, that the immanent temporal objects, the primary temporal objects, are given freshly, I guess. They are given in I guess they're given in immediacy. They're given in freshness, I guess. But the truth is that all that other stuff, the protensions, the primary remembrances, the retentions, all of that are themselves also immanent temporal objects of their own. They just happen to be residues of the other immanent temporal objects of this one line of givenness. So Husserl does emphasize that the present is a now. It is a now, and that's contained in itself. It's somewhat emphasized, I guess. But what is overlooked, I think, by Derrida is in this speech of phenomena, in one of the essays in that, as well as some others as well. What is overlooked is that Husserl also does look at the fact that there are traces and residue of the before and the after in the now. And even though we do have, primary remembrances and retentions and protensions, above and below this continuum of immanent givenness, we do have these things below the immanent temporal object continuum line. There are various other continuums, lines of continuums, below and above these lines. And in those are still also immanent temporal objects, even though they are residue and traces of the exact immanent temporal object continuum line. So what I think is overlooked by Derrida when he criticizes Husserl's idea of time is that every single primary remembrance, every single retention, every single protension are themselves also immanent temporal objects, even though they are, residue and traces of the original ones. So I don't really see an emphasis on future or present or past in Husserl's idea of time. So if you know Husserl's idea of time, and you recognize some sort of bias or emphasis on before or the after or the present, then let me know. I'd like to hear what you think about that. And he says that time should emphasize deferral. If you have read the essay Deferral, which is also in this volume, deferral is pretty much the word that is given. It's like difference with a deferral. That is given, as a word which kind of encompasses this idea of difference and deferral. And in French, différence and différence with the E and the A are pronounced the same way. But deferral is supposed to refer to time, and difference is supposed to refer to, spatiality to be two, is supposed to refer to spatiality, if I'm going to oversimplify Derrida. He says that time is supposed to emphasize deferral. It's always going to be, this now that Husserl talks about is supposedly ever going to be in the future. We're always going to be grasping for it, but we're never gonna get it. So, in my opinion, that emphasizes future. It emphasizes future. There's more emphasis in what Derrida says in deferral than there is in Husserl's idea of internal time consciousness. The now is always going to elude us. It's always going to be something that we're going to grasp for, but we're never going to get. Okay, going to Derrida's criticism of Husserl's idea of emphasis of perception, his emphasis of to the things themselves. Derrida says that the thing itself is always going to be another thing that we're grasping for, but we're never going to find. It's always going to be. This is a emphasis on difference. Sorry, I think I'm getting like a cold or something. Anyway, it's emphasizing difference. That we're always going to be grasping for the thing in itself, but we're never going to get at it. We're never going to be able to get at it. So, this emphasis on perception, Derrida says, of immediate givenness. And Derrida says that all this is wrong. That the thing itself, the perception should be emphasized on difference, always trying to get at the thing in itself, but never getting it. Trying to grab it, but then it always slips away. It always slips away. And then time is supposed to be emphasized on deferral. Always trying to get at the now, but never getting at it, because we're emphasizing deferral, and we're emphasizing the future. It's going to defer into infinity. Okay, so first of all, I want to say something about the idea of what Derrida says about the emphasis in phenomenology about appearance and perception. The thing in itself is when I see this. When I see this, this is not slipping away. It's there. It doesn't matter who you are, but there's always going to be givenness. There's always going to be something given to you. Okay. There's always going to be something given to you. It doesn't matter. I don't see how that is. And first of all, he's emphasizing difference, when difference and same are two things of the dichotomy. So emphasizing difference is logocentrism. It's emphasizing one thing over the other, when it should be left up to a play between difference and same. That's what he says in the essay Derridas. There's same, how things are similar. That's always going to subvert itself into what is different, and that it can be left to a free play. But in critiquing Husserl's idea of the thing itself and perception, he's emphasizing difference rather than same. So I feel like he's emphasizing things in both of his critiques of Husserl on perception and time. He's emphasizing something where there is a marginalized other, which he is not taking into account. And I don't think that phenomenology is wrong when we say, or when phenomenologists say that that there is immediate givenness to all of us. There's always immediate givenness. if we think about what could be a marginalized other, when we think about immediate givenness in perception, there's consciousness and then there's unconsciousness. There's sentience and non-sentience. The opposite, the marginalized other of perception and immediate givenness and consciousness is unconsciousness, non-sentience, and ungivenness or non-givenness. Okay. If the marginalized other in this case were at all ever the case, we would never be thinking about this. This is one thing in the world where there's two opposites. There's a dichotomy between perception and non-perception sentience and non-sentience, givenness and non-givenness. Where the marginalized other, is never ever going to happen for us until we die. But right now, when we are perceiving things, when we are experiencing givenness, it just so happens that we can't subvert this emphasized part of the dichotomy into the other, because if we could, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would not be considering any of this. We would be not conscious, so we would not be thinking about. We wouldn't have givenness or anything. So this is just one truth about the world. That we have givenness. Everything is given to us. Everything is. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation. None of this would be at all an issue. So, my paper essentially is going to be talking about Husserl's dictums to the things themselves, and talking about Husserl's idea of time and the phenomenology of internal time consciousness, and talking about Derrida's critique that comes from this book. His critique, centers around deferrals, difference and deferral. And what I'm going to argue is that Husserl's phenomenology does not commit metaphysics of presence. Metaphysics of presence, according to Derrida, is when we're saying that there's presence or the logos or meaning in this one place. We're looking for and saying that there is a transcendental signified under something. And logocentrism is what Derrida charges all of Western traditional philosophy with, is that we're looking for meaning. We're saying that there is meaning somewhere, and we're actively looking for it, and we're actively saying that this part of the dichotomy is true. We're saying that presence is there and not absence, or we're saying that same is there and not difference, or we're saying that presence is here and not future or past. We're emphasizing certain parts of dichotomies. Phenomenology doesn't do that. Husserl's transcendental ego does not have an indivisible consciousness. The transcendental ego is essentially the essence of all streams of consciousness. Is really what it is. The transcendental ego comes from the essence of all streams of consciousness that is, attributed to us. It's attributed to all streams of consciousness, and thus the eyes, the egos, the eyes, and all that is being said that is there by Husserl is that there is a stream of consciousness, and there is, some sort of an I, is in the word, the word I, the I, that is attributed to this stream of consciousness, which is, I don't really see a whole lot of problems with that. The only way that comes into problems is if you're trying to do existentialism or existential phenomenology, or if you're trying to do something that Heidegger is doing or Sartre is doing, that's when you come into problems with Husserl's thing. But Husserl's phenomenology does not commit logocentrism, and it does not do metaphysics of presence. All it's saying is that there is streams of consciousness. This is the transcendental. The transcendental ego is the essence of all streams of consciousness that is given an I, some sort of consciousness, I guess, that is attributed to some sort of ownness or ownership. And that is found here. With all of us, we have a stream of consciousness where we have givenness. Things are given to us. And it just so happens that there is, some sort of ownership with this. If you read the Critique of Meditations, there is a originosphere, a sphere of spheronness, or a primordial sphere. I have problems with the sphere of ownness, but with the transcendental ego, there is nothing, no logocentrism, no metaphysics of presence done at all. None. That is essentially what my paper is going to argue, and argue even further that the program of deferrals that Derrida is using to critique Husserl's phenomenology even does itself a little bit of logocentrism. The idea of difference emphasizes difference and not same. The idea of deferral in time emphasizes future and not presence or past. So not only am I going to argue that Husserl's phenomenology does not do any of those things, and it should not be charged with these issues. Furthermore, I'm going to argue that what Derrida says about phenomenology commits a form of logocentrism itself. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks.